It will mark 1 year since President Biden took office. And we should all be asking ourselves one question. Is America better off after 12 months of one-party rule in Washington? Well, let's recap to see what the answer to that question is. 1 million kids started the year off once again, dealing with abrupt school closures, returning to more uncertainty and disruption. I know you heard it from so many parents, being stuck once again. Homicides in 2021 were near record highs. In several major cities like Philadelphia and Portland, murders hit the highest rate in the city's history. Now we have the reason you're all here. We have the highest inflation rate in 40 years, causing prices to surge. That increase you see there all happened under President Biden's watch. To put that number in perspective, here is the real impact inflation is having on soaring prices. Americans are paying on a daily basis. 50% in gas, used cars up 37%, hotels 28%, beef 19%. Now that's only if you could actually find it. Consumers been to the store recently? Over the past week, Americans have shared their experiences of dealing with empty shelves and sparse supply while doing their grocery shopping. By nearly every single measure, America is worse off than we were before Joe Biden took office. And despite the slews of ongoing crisis, what did the president do and where did he travel this week? Did he go to a school to advocate for our children to return to the classrooms? No, he did not. Not to one of the communities dealing with the historic crime surge. And we know he didn't go to the border to see the situation firsthand because he's been avoiding that crisis all year. No, the President of the United States went to Atlanta to appease his Twitter base, spread falsehoods, and to disparage millions of Americans. You know, the Biden agenda is now so toxic that the Daily Beast, now that's far from a right-leaning publication, recently dubbed it as a Build Back Quieter, because even Democrats are actively avoiding talking about it. And by the way, I have a question for all of you. Did anyone in this room find out where Stacey Abrams' scheduling conflict was all about? Well, maybe we just found the answer. Need any other indication President Biden is unpopular? As I come week after week, it is now 26 Democrats have announced they will be retiring. That's more than any cycle since 1996. And as I've said from the very beginning, that number will get higher. They cannot run on a record of failure. They definitely can't run on a record of accomplishments. I know that record will be higher than 30 retirements as it goes. Who can blame these Democrats? The only thing they have to show their constituents for the past year is how they've succeeded in making life harder for the average American. And they have done is push more mandates and more controls. House Republicans understand the priorities of the American people. They want prices to come down. They want their kids' schools open. They want safer communities to be able to walk in their neighborhoods and a sense that their government is listening to their needs. Now, if entrusted with the majority, House Republicans will dedicate our legislative and accountability agenda to focusing on the true needs of the American people. This is a commitment we make as a conference. We will not lose sight of why you elected us to represent you in Washington. With that, let's open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for you. A year ago today, on January 13th, 2021, you stood on the House floor and you said the president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress. You said that he should have immediately denounced the mob. And you also said that there's no evidence that what happened was started by Antifa. Wondering if you still stand by those comments, and also A few days after that, you went down to visit the former president in Mar-a-Lago. What changed? Why did you make that trip?
What changed? Why did I make the trip?
What changed from what you said on the floor, criticizing him, saying that he was...
My criticism went to everyone on that day. Why was the Capitol so ill-prepared that day?
At the time, you made those comments directly about the president, though.
Why was the Capitol so ill-prepared that day? And how do we make sure it will never be ill-prepared again? I just had a conference with our members and the Sergeant of Arms and the Capitol Police. You weren't in the room, but let me give you an answer to some of the questions that were asked. In some of the questions that were asked to the Capitol Police, the chief said that was above his pay grade to make the answer. I asked him, well, who's above you? Simple question about magnetometers coming before the chambers. And he said, well, if another speaker comes in and decides they're to go, they go. Another question to the Sergeant of Arms was, has the January 6th committee asked for any of the communications from the former Sergeant of Arms to the speaker that day? To the best of his knowledge, they have not asked for any of that. The more we learn about the situation, the more we find that from investigation to investigation, the changes made in the Capitol Police Intel Department in November of not providing them information going further has been a real problem on the basis for that day. And the core of what we need to have happen here is, why was this building so ill-prepared, and how do we make sure that never happens again? Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure what call you're talking about, so off the top of my head. Yes, sir. How's CNN doing? Are you guys okay? Good. All right.
You battled the creation of an outside commission from the start. You also opposed the select committee.
Well, that's not true.
Well, you also
Go ahead, ask your question, and I'll verify what's true and not.
I appreciate that. But you said, sure, you'd be willing to testify about your conversation.
Yeah, what was the date of that?
That was in May of last year.
Okay.
And you're now saying you won't agree to voluntarily
Okay.
cooperate. So why should the public not conclude that you're trying to hide something here and hide the facts from getting out?
Great question. I hope everything gets corrected at CNN. I work through all that with your employees. After January 6th, you can state this, who was the first person to offer a bipartisan commission to look at that day? Was it me? I'll help you. The answer is yes. Nancy Pelosi waited 4 months. In that time period, as we came here and discussed many times, you were here, you would ask me questions. My fear began to erode that she'd play politics with this. You watched it unfold and unfold, how she would prepare that who could have a subpoena power, who can have the scope, continuing to fight it all along the way that we now found she just played politics while the Senate had 2 committees, bipartisan, look at what happened on January 6th. The FBI was doing their own investigation. And you all know the role of Congress, the only role we have is legislative. You asked me that question in May. That was 2 months before Nancy Pelosi decided for the first time in history by any speaker to deny the minority to even put their individuals on a committee. So when you asked me that question, never did I think a speaker would play such politics and then appoint a chairman who starts the committee by saying the only person out of bounds is the speaker. And now that we find, even when we ask to preserve that information with the Sergeant of Arms, that they will not provide it. Maybe if Nancy Pelosi had done what other speakers would do and not play politics with it, there could have been a different answer. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go right ahead. Go ahead, sir.
You have a unique window into the president on that day, January 6th. You were one of the only few people who spoke to him that day. Doesn't the American public have a right to know what the president of the United States was thinking and doing while the U.S. Capitol was under attack?
You know, that's a great question. You know the great thing about that? I didn't wait a year later. On January 6th, I spoke to the American public. Not by one network, but by many networks. My conversation was very short, advising the president of what was happening here. There is nothing that I can provide the January 6th committee for legislation of them moving forward. There is nothing in that realm. It is pure politics of what they're playing. Yes, sir.
On that note,
Yes.
so when you're in the majority, the only oversight you guys will conduct is oversight that you intend to write bills off of? Is that your, because Congress has a long history of legislating, of oversight that doesn't necessarily result in legislation. You guys did it, Pelosi did it, Boehner did it, Ryan did it. I mean, there's a long history of that. So
Really? And how often have we gone after people's phone records?
I'm asking you
This,
about what you will do. What you will do if you are the Speaker of the House, will you only conduct oversight that is
you know what we'll do if we are entrusted with the majority? The first thing we'll do is talk about how do we lower the prices for the American public? How do we make gasoline price affordable again? How do we put food back on the shelves? How do we stop this rise of inflation and prices of everything you deal with? How do we secure our border? How do we stop government mandating and controlling our lives? How do we make cities safe again? And yes, we will hold this administration accountable. We just found this week, I sent a letter with Virginia Fox. The Secretary of Education asked the National School Board to send them a letter so he can go to the Attorney General to now investigate the parents who go to school board meetings of terrorism. Afghanistan. We have 13 new Gold Star families. That never had to happen. How many Americans are still stuck there? Have any of you asked that question? The president said just weeks before he would not leave until every American was gone. The taxpayer that bought all that weaponry that the Taliban now has. You got any reporting and recording of where that is? Where's it being sold to now on the black market? IRS releasing Americans' tax returns. Yes, we can do both, and we will. I hope you all have a great weekend. Take care and stay safe.
You're not going to call me, Kevin? You're not going to call me? Can you? Fascinating.